Welcome to Unleash Your Inner Goldilocks, How to Get It Just Right. Thank you for joining us in another hour of very important and insightful conversation. You may be wondering why I'm dressed traditional today. Today is the new year. Yesterday and today is the new year for all of the Dravidian culture that is South Asian subcontinent. So from Sri Lanka, India, all the way to Cambodia, we're celebrating New Year. So for all our audience out there celebrating the New Year, wish you a peaceful, joyful, and prosperous New Year. And for those of our community members, we wish you the same love, joy, peace, and prosperity in your continuing year. What are we trying to do in Unleash Your Inner Goldilocks, and what is today's conversation going to be about? You may be wondering, as we bringing the new year in my tradition, I want today's conversation to be about people. We live on this earth because we are able to be supported by Mother Nature and because we have a community of humanity. We're all the same, our outer wrappings are different. How do we understand that? How do we bring it into the workplace? And how do we honor the dignity of every human being in our society and organization so that we make it a humane, joyful, and innovative place where everybody can live, everybody can thrive, and everybody can perform at their best? Because when we bring our best to the table collectively, we can make a huge impact. And to help me do that, I have a wonderful gentleman who has been in the industry for more than 20 years, Jim Connolly. Welcome to Unleash Your Inner Goldilocks.
Thank you, Dr. Cass. It's an honor to be here.
My pleasure. Thank you for being a special guest today. And Jim comes to us with 21 years of experience leading his organization, industry leading results. And the organization and Jim are committed to the human capital equation and how do we best manage, develop, and drive for positive impact the human capital life cycle. So take a moment and help us understand, Jim, how you got into this place of that human capital life cycle and understanding the importance of that. And what does your organization do?
Sure. So I got my start actually in high school. Through student council, of all places. My freshman year at my high school was the first year for our new student council advisor, Ed Phelps. Ed is 89 years old. He'll be 90 in May. We're throwing a big celebration for him. I still have him as a mentor. And that relationship started with a Saturday morning 2-hour workshop that he was doing about group dynamics and leadership. And I was hooked. I was absolutely enamored with that topic and how that works. And so he happened to be the workshop consultant for the Illinois Association of Student Councils and the National Association of Student Councils. So he traveled during the summer and he took 8 students with him on the road for 6 or 8 weeks, teaching these 5-day leadership classes for high school students who had to apply to be in the program. And the second week, he came to me and said, okay, you're going to watch these 2 groups. And he said, I'm not going to tell you why, but they're going to behave differently. And I want you to tell me how they behave differently. So long story short, the groups go through their activity and they behave very differently. And he came over to me and he said, what did you notice? I said, one group got, organized, got stuck a little bit, figured out, got moving, and succeeded. And he said, what about the other group? I said, the other group, enthusiastic at the beginning, got a little bit stuck and never recovered. And when he told me that he had given the first group exactly the information that they needed to solve the puzzle, and that's what he had done with the first group. But the second group, he had given them exactly the information they needed to solve the puzzle, plus 3 times more information from other activities and irrelevant data and all kinds of other things. And the second group eventually splintered. And you guys don't know what you're talking about. Hey, let's fix this. We can do this on our own. And then we can do this on our own. And the group kind of pulled apart. And my life was changed at that moment because I said, this is what I want to do for a living. And so that was the start. I went to college. There were the degrees to get, it was industrial organizational psychology. I wasn't really interested in the industrial side. So I majored in business and psychology, double major. Went out in the work world, got an MBA, came back and finished my a master's in organizational psychology, and I'm 4 classes into my doctorate work. So I've owned my company for 21 years, but I've done this work for 10 years even prior to that. And if you add up the years all the way back to freshman year in high school, it's a very long period of time that I really don't like to talk about how long ago that really was. So
now that is such a beautiful journey where a mentor saw your potential, saw your hidden gift, and guided through, and you're a living example of somebody tapping into your human capital potential, and your entire life you've been paying it forward. That is so magical. And that's what we hope that everybody gets, right?
Yeah. And since then, I am compelled in a good way, and I cannot help but give back by mentoring young people. I had a mentor last summer from Northwestern University, and brilliant young man, and opened his eyes, had him read 12 different books over the course of the summer. And we talked about things and wrestled with ideas and his ideas, and I don't agree with that, and here's why. And he is grateful for that and applying that in ways that fellow students don't have.
And that is such an important element, grooming the next generation and giving them the ability to take perspective and then engage in a conversation so that they get their training wheels before they go out there. So you truly have taken what worked for you and how somebody lifted you up by investing in you. And you're doing that. How do your clients engage with you? How are they receiving it? How is that entire process? How does that work?
Sure. Glad to talk about that. So it's the company is Industry Leading Results, which is part of a process from, hey, we're having a hiring problem. That's what a client calls with potentially. We're having a hiring problem. We have performance below expectations. We have too much turnover. So it starts with a symptom, and we progress along helping organizations with improve employee performance, team performance, leader performance, organizational performance, and then from a competitive point of view to become an industry leading company. And then beyond that, there's even a step where a company becomes disruptive. It's disruptive innovation, reinventing their industry. And so the company name came from that phase, that step, let's let's keep working until we've achieved industry leading results. And when you get there, your eyes open up to the potential of disruptive innovation and what you could do. So the tagline of the company is the science of hiring, building, and retaining top performers. And an organization is vaporware, right? You can't touch an organization. An organization is made up of individual employees. And really the guiding principle to the work that I do is that while every person is unique, employee performance issues are not unique at all. Human behavior is incredibly predictable.
Mm-hmm.
And if you look at those two groups that I had to observe and you see the difference in their performance, because human behavior is unique, you can watch, you can listen, and you can understand that using human behavior science, you can see where the performance issue is, where the problem is. And at no time am I interested in helping company ownership manipulate their employees into performing better, because part of our process is that we're going to teach the leaders, because we need leadership buy-in first, but then we're going to teach the employees and we're going to give them the same information we gave the leaders. So there's no manipulation. It's an understanding that, for instance, our physiology sometimes takes over even when we don't want it to. And that's where arguments come from, and that's where fear comes from, and that's where flight comes from. And if you understand that that's a naturally occurring process that you can't stop immediately, you can't, it happens without your permission, and it's for good reason. The fight or flight, survival of the fittest instinct is there for a very good reason.
Yeah.
But in our modern day, we don't usually run into, tigers chasing us back into the cave to try and eat us. We have different threats and worries and stresses. But that principle, that human behavior science is still there, even though each person is unique, truly unique.
So a couple of things you're talking about deeply resonates with me. You were very specific in saying people call you for your help because of the symptoms. Most organizations will define them as their problem statement.
Correct.
But coming from finance, I understand that that is a symptom and the root cause is someplace else. And the treatment effect has to be at that root cause to address the symptom, right? This is what's coming from the wash. So that is such a key point that you're not only making, you're educating our audience and you're educating organizations on. So that is such a mission critical first step, without which nothing happens, because if we attack the wrong thing, we're going to get unintended consequences, right? And the other thing that resonates, and I want to reemphasize, is fight or flight is basic creature instinctive behavior.
Primitive.
How do we understand it and how do we channel it? And in order to do that, you need to guide everybody, the whole organization through with transparency. So what I'm hearing is you are creating a framework for a inclusive, free of psychological animosity, so psychologically safe spaces.
Exactly.
So organizational culture is the fertile ground for everything to grow. Talk a little bit about the organizational culture and the organizations being comfortable to show up authentic to that culture and congruent to their values. Because a lot of times employers misrepresent who they are and why they do what they do. And when there is no value congruence and cultural congruence at the point of hiring, it's a downhill battle after that.
Oh, absolutely. And you're trying to get value and a return and engagement from the employee you just hired, and in the first week they see the inconsistency between what they were told in the interview process and then how the company really works. And you're right, it's a downhill, spiral from there. That's the best it's going to get in their first week. And so culture is so critically important, but again, it's invisible and we can't touch it and we can't, see it. But employees and leaders and people in an organization see, sense, feel the culture every day. Did I just hear my boss lie in a meeting? Does the company, it says that it's, employee focused, but are they really employee focused? Now, what's interesting in around culture is that every, companies develop culture surveys. Well, let me back up. Every company has a culture. Some of them are intended and some of them are unintended. So when a company tries to focus on culture and build an intended culture, there's hundreds of surveys and how do we assess culture and are you happy here, and let's look at employee engagement and all kinds of potential ways to measure culture. And most companies come up with their own, and these are the questions we're going to ask, and that's all fascinating but frustrating and futile, because in the research, it shows that there are only 5 factors that tie directly to a company's financial performance. 5 culture factors that tie directly to a company's financial performance. So if you want to work on something out here, that's great because it's important to the owners, or it's deeply embedded in their beliefs about how people should be treated. That's great. There are factors that we want to work on because we care about people and we want to build an intended culture. But buried in all of those questions are 5 factors that tie directly to the company's financial performance. And when those 5 factors are healthy, more healthy in a company, the financial performance of the company is more healthy. And that's the challenge in terms of culture. There's a lot of noise out there around culture and around employee performance. And as you mentioned, when we treat the symptom and not the root cause, we see improvement, we see progress, but it's short-lived because then we go back to doing it the old way. It's when we try and diet, when we try and eat more healthy, we make some improvement and then we run out of willpower, and the willpower is depleted and we go back to our old behavior. And so human behavior science is incredibly fascinating. I've done 2,800 plus behavioral interviews, interviewing candidates for my client companies. And I really thought that after I did 250 or 500 behavioral interviews, that I would get bored with the entire process. The truth is that after 2,800 behavioral interviews, I am more fascinated with each and every conversation than I ever was, because human behavior is fascinating. It's truly fascinating. And you can see, while every person is unique, human behavior is highly predictable, but then you get a chance sometimes to kind of peer into the soul of this person to find out who they really are and what their fears are and what they could be, that even they sometimes don't have a conscious level sense of.
And that is so beautiful to hear, that you actually relate to it at that deeply not just personal. You seem to go deeper than personal. It's almost spiritual, psychological, all of that rolled in,
Yeah.
because you're seeing the layers of the person, layers of the organization. So one of the things I'm still curious about is, would you be opening to share what those 5 elements were? You opened the door but never walked through. So I'm curious.
Off the top of my head, I don't know that I can remember all of them, but
Uh-huh,
I can do a little blurb and
uh-huh.
pass it on. I'd be glad to share it.
Absolutely.
I'm not trying to hide the information. It's publicly available, so I'd be glad to share it. What's interesting is one of those factors, 1 out of the 5, is employee engagement.
Mhm.
And if you've read books from Gallup or Strengths Finders and their surveys about employee engagement, what you find is that Gallup wants you to drink the Gallup Kool-Aid, and
Mhm.
it's all about employee engagement. Well, in reality, in terms of company culture and performance, employee engagement is one of 5 factors that are important. And it's important that the fact that people write books and say this is the answer, and I'm not picking on Gallup, and all organizations, and Atomic Habits, and then other books about other factors, and people say maybe this is the answer that I've been looking for. I can't lose weight, and I've tried 14 different books. I've tried so many different programs. I'm trying to improve my department's, my team's performance, and I read this book and I read that book, and the sad part is that all of that gives us a piece of the puzzle, but it's not the puzzle. It doesn't give us the true insight into how human behavior really works and how we can impact human behavior. Again, not from a perspective of manipulation. We're not tricking employees into performing better. We're saying to employees, you're performing at this level. Do you want to employ, do you want to perform at this level? Yeah, I want to advance. I want to learn. I want to grow. I want to progress with the company. Great. Let me show you how. Here's how human behavior works. Here's how your human behavior works. And here's how you can make progress. Here's how you're wired from a brain chemistry point of view. And here's how to play to your strengths. Here are your blind spots. Here are things that you'll enjoy doing and some things that you won't enjoy doing. And you can develop knowledge and skills in those areas. Maybe you have a part of your job that you don't enjoy, and you know how to do it. You have knowledge and skills in those areas, but knowledge and skills alone will never make up for the lack of talent or brain wiring. And so what are your talents and what are your knowledge and skills? And then when you combine the 3 of them together, knowledge plus skills plus talent, you create this strength, and you do the work of 2 or 3 people, and time flies by, which is actually part of the chemical process that takes place in your brain, which is a reward for you and your body's way of saying, do that again. You're good at this. Do it again. And that's where we learn to our passions and to play to our strengths. And hopefully we get to combine that with a opportunity at a company where we get to play to our strengths and do what we love to do. I tell people all the time, I started my company 21 years ago, and I haven't had a job in more than 21 years. I do what I love what I do. It's not work. Yeah, there are long days and long weeks and canceled flights and frustrations, but it's not work. And that's what I wish for everybody.
I totally hear you. And it truly is going to be resonating with our audience. And I'm sure they're going to take this message into the workplace. One of the things that is coming up for me, and we had touched on before the programs we started recording, is what can people do as they start recruiting as an employer and as employees, potential employees looking for work? How do we make sure that we are getting to the bottom of what is at the other end? And is there a meeting of the mind? An interview process sometimes feels like speed dating, right?
Yeah,
And
exactly.
you may end up, somewhere all beat up. And how do we make sure the process is driving the intended outcome for both parties? There is truly a marriage and the union that is going to improve both, because my definition of a relationship is two independent, successful human beings or entities coming together to make each other better than they are individually.
Exactly. And you've touched on something that's so important, because I start with, and the science to back it up, the interviewing process is dysfunctional on both sides of the desk. The candidates have read books on how to beat behavioral interviews. You're going to be asked questions, you're going to be asked for examples, you're going to be asked for your weaknesses, and in this book, here are the 100 questions you're going to be asked potentially, and here are the 100 perfect answers to every one of those questions. I had a young lady years ago, and I said, we've spent some time talking about your strengths. Now tell me about your weaknesses. And she was laid back and casual and relaxed. And all of a sudden she took this pose. She sat up straight, folded her hands, and she said, my biggest weakness is that I show too much initiative. And what I wanted to say was, oh, shut up. Stop lying to me. Because you were real and you were authentic just a minute ago until I asked about your weaknesses. And then you went into perfect answer interview mode and said, my biggest weakness is that I show too much initiative. So for employees who have rehearsed perfect answers, instead of focusing on where can they contribute their passion, and where can they get dopamine, and where can they get engaged, and instead of focusing on those things, some applicants are focused on getting the job. No, it's not, but the mortgage company is calling, so I need a job, so whatever you got, yeah, that's me. So it's dysfunctional. On the hiring side and the employer side, hey, this sales territory's been empty for 5 months. If you can fog the mirror, you can start Monday. And highly dysfunctional on both sides. So I walk clients through a process called an ideal candidate profile. I do that because it works against the number one reason that companies hire. The number one reason that companies hire is affinity. I like this person. Boy, she really impressed me. Oh, she reminds me of Samantha. Wow, and we should hire this person. But when you look at the research, affinity is not correlated with on-the-job performance at all. That it's just not there, although it's the number one reason we hire people. So the whole process is dysfunctional. This ideal candidate profile says, objectively, what are we looking for? And let's use the knowledge plus skills plus talents, the brain chemistry. What are we looking for from a brain chemistry point of view? And then let's design interview questions around that brain chemistry that we want, and see if that talent is there or not. And then ask for examples. And then here's the key, ask for another example. And then another example, I tell candidates all the time, this is going to be a very different kind of interview because I'm going to ask you questions until you can't answer them anymore. And that when you can't answer them anymore doesn't mean that you're failing in the interview. It means I'm measuring the depth of that talent, that raw, naturally occurring pattern of thought, feeling, or behavior. I'm measuring the depth of that talent. Do you like being analytical? Well, yeah, I balance my checkbook. Well, if that's the extent of your analytical ability, then you're not the right person for this particular position. But if you design, give me examples about designing multi-layered spreadsheets, and you like calculating this, and you're analytical and you can't help it, and then it's a naturally occurring pattern. And if that's what I need, somebody who's analytical, let me find somebody who cannot help but be analytical, and then we've made a match in terms of that particular factor, that particular talent.
I've never heard it explained that way, Jim, and that is music to my ears, because too many times the employee wants the job and the employer wants to, fill an empty seat.
Exactly.
So both of them are doing a tick the box exercise, truly not engaged for the right reason. So that is such a beautiful nugget for us to bring this conversation to a close and open up for one question from our audience. So knowledge, skill, and talent, where the three meet up, is where the person is going to be joyful about what they do, and they're going to drive their own success. And therefore, it becomes inevitable that the organization's success is driven.
Exactly.
To me, that is such a valuable piece of insight that we can all start employing.
Yes, absolutely. And let me add one thing. Sometimes the candidate may have experience or may talk about the fact that they have knowledge and skills, let's say in this analytical area, but dig deeper. Find out if that analytical nature wiring is at the talent level, the naturally occurring pattern of thought, feeling, or behavior. So it may appear, they have on their resume, they have knowledge and skills. Well, don't be tricked by that, because knowledge and skills without the talent will not get you to where you need to be. So
that's so important. Thank you. Thank you, Jim. Yes, Robin, go ahead. I know you cannot wait, being from positive psychology and organizational behavior area yourself.
Excellent.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I love this conversation. Love, love, love. Totally resonate with everything you're saying. I got my MBA many, many, many years ago with an emphasis in organizational behavior, and got my undergrad in human resource development when it was a brand new major back in 1978, 79. And then graduated 82, then 84 with my MBA. And then just a few years ago, went back to Penn and got my Master of Applied Positive Psychology with an emphasis in positive organizational scholarship. And so I assume you've heard of Kim Cameron, but if not, you need to. But he talks about what he calls no stat all-stars. And looking at the NBA, there's a few players who are just average. They themselves are just average players.
Yeah.
But no matter what team they get on, the entire team elevates. And so
Yes.
I am kind of interested in, what about, the middling employees? You're not everyone is going to be what you call an all-star.
Right.
Have a whole slew of people who themselves would say, I'm just kind of average.
Right.
But yet, how can you bring all of their knowledge, skill, and talents we could have a whole nother discussion on, bring what they have to offer to the table, so that altogether it becomes the whole becomes, what is the saying? the whole is greater than the sum of the parts.
Exactly.
And like, retaining top performers. Well, how about retaining the middle people?
Yeah. Yeah, because the middle group, good people, good performers, no, we're not going to fire them. No, we're not going to. But yeah, so is there an opportunity to help develop them? And the answer is absolutely, because they, in an easy, quick answer, they could be the right person in the wrong seat on the bus, because they're processing paperwork. But you know what? When they fill in for the person in customer service, when that person goes on vacation, they thrive and they come alive and they contribute at 3 or 4x compared to their, regular job. And then, 2 weeks later, we move them back to 1x instead of 3x. And, leaders, and I understand this, I don't have time if I have 100 employees, I don't have time to figure out 100 one-of-a-kind art projects. I don't have time to do that. And that's where I introduce the principle that while every person is unique, human behavior is highly predictable. Let's use some tools. Let's use some questions and ask people, if you couldn't be in this job any longer, what job ideally would you like to have? Oh, I enjoyed it when I was in customer service for 2 weeks, and oh my gosh, I would love that. And so, yeah, we can grow, 1x performers, average performers, good employees. We can build them into 1.5x. and then 2.0x, and then 2.5, and grow them. Sometimes you take them out of that paper processing job and you put them in customer service, and they go from 1x to 4x, from Friday to Monday. Oh my God, I love this, and it feeds me, and I'm contributing. And I love it, and I'm more engaged than ever. And, how do we do that in organizations, position by position? And again, it's not 100 individual, unique art projects. It's human behavior science that guides our questions and our tools and our insights about how to build organizations like this. And it works for basketball teams. If you haven't watched or read the book Moneyball, Moneyball does it. Every team had exactly the same information, and one team dug deeper. The Oakland A's dug deeper into the data and saw insights that other teams had available but never bothered to dig for. And when they started to run the organization based on these new insights, they outperformed their competitors at a payroll 1/3 the size of most of their other competitors. And well, that's not possible. Well, yes, it is. It's possible in every organization. And that's why I have a blast every day helping organizations and individuals do that.
That's great. Awesome. Love that.
What a fascinating conversation, Jim, and love your question, Robin, as always. I know this is only a short 25 to 30-minute conversation. So, Jim, we are going to have to figure out a way to bring you back and layer and continue to have these conversations, because the human element is who we are. And the more we are aware of it, and the more we are able to have some commonalities to think and function around it, I think as a human society, we are going to become better. And I really would love to build on this and talk about, if this is what is needed in an organization, what is needed in our society for us to be functional and for our society to thrive. That is a place we so desperately need to go. And with your permission, I would love to bring you back to have that conversation on another day.
Absolutely. I would love the opportunity, and then we can get into, our spirits and how we're connected to each other, even though we don't know each other, and how we operate in the universe. And there's layers and layers that we can talk about. So that would be great fun.
Beautiful. And this has been tremendously enlightening and joyful.
Good.
Very, very joyful. So thank you so much, Jim, for giving us your time.
Yeah.
And we are grateful. And to our Goldilocks community, this is what we mean by every human interaction is our opportunity for transformation. So go out there, meet people, get to know them. In that process, get to know a little more about yourself and transform into this beautiful, beautiful, talented human being that you were destined to become.